In 1970, the average American home cost about $23,000. The average household income was around $10,000. That means a typical family could buy a house for roughly 2.5 times their annual salary. Today, the median home price in the United States is over $400,000, while the median household income sits around $75,000. That ratio has ballooned to over 5 times annual income. In cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York, it's closer to 10 or 12 times. Something fundamentally broke in the housing market, and it didn't happen by accident. This is the story of why you can't afford a house anymore, who actually benefits from that, and what almost nobody is telling you about where this is heading. Let's start with the most obvious factor: supply. America simply stopped building enough homes. In the 1970s and 80s, the country was constructing around 2 million new housing units per year. After the 2008 financial crisis, that number collapsed to under 500,000 and never fully recovered. Today, the United States has a shortage of roughly 4 million homes. That's 4 million families competing for houses that don't exist. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not that builders can't build, it's that local zoning laws make it nearly impossible. Over 75% of residential land in major American cities is zoned exclusively for single-family homes. That means no apartments, no duplexes, no townhouses, just sprawling single-family houses on large lots. This artificial scarcity drives prices up by limiting how many people can live in desirable areas. The homeowners already there benefit from rising property values, so they fight any attempt to change the rules. It's a system designed to protect the wealth of those who already own homes at the expense of everyone trying to get in. Now layer on what happened after 2020. When the pandemic hit, the Federal Reserve slashed interest rates to nearly zero to keep the economy alive. Mortgage rates dropped below 3%, the lowest in recorded history. This created a buying frenzy. People who had been sitting on the sidelines rushed into the market. Remote work meant people could move anywhere, and they did, flooding smaller cities and towns with big city salaries, outbidding local buyers on everything. But here's the part that really changed the game. It wasn't just families buying homes. It was corporations. In the years following 2020, institutional investors, companies like Blackstone, Invitation Homes, and dozens of private equity firms bought hundreds of thousands of single-family homes across the country. In some markets, investors were purchasing over 30% of all homes sold. They weren't buying to live in them. They were buying to rent them back to the very people who couldn't afford to buy. Think about that for a moment. The American dream of home ownership is being systematically converted into a subscription service. You pay rent to a faceless corporation that owns the home you wanted to buy, and every rent payment you make builds their wealth instead of yours.
Then came the interest rate shock. Starting in 2022, the Federal Reserve began the fastest rate hiking cycle in over 40 years. Mortgage rates doubled from 3% to over 7% almost overnight. For a $400,000 home, that means your monthly payment went from around $1,700 to nearly $2,700, an extra $1,000 a month for the exact same house. Buyers were priced out instantly, but sellers refused to lower their prices. Why would they? They were locked into 3% mortgages from the pandemic era. Selling meant giving up a rate they'd never see again, so they stayed put, and the market froze. This created what economists call a lock-in effect. Millions of homeowners are essentially trapped in their current homes, not because they want to stay, but because leaving would mean trading a 3% mortgage for a 7% one. The result? Inventory collapsed further. The few homes that did hit the market were swarmed by desperate buyers willing to pay almost anything. Cash offers became the norm. Bidding wars erupted in neighborhoods where homes had sat for months just a few years earlier. And let's talk about what nobody in mainstream media will say plainly. The housing crisis is not a side effect of a healthy economy. It is, in many ways, by design. High home prices are great for existing homeowners, who are also voters. They're great for banks, who collect interest on larger and larger mortgages. They're great for local governments, who collect higher property taxes, and they're great for institutional investors who watch their portfolios grow. The only people the current system doesn't work for are the people trying to break in. Young Americans, first-time buyers, immigrants, low-income families, the very people the system was supposedly built to serve. So where does this go from here? Some economists predict prices will continue climbing as supply remains constrained and population grows. Others argue a correction is inevitable once something breaks, whether that's a recession, a credit event, or a policy shift. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Markets don't go in one direction forever, but structural problems like zoning restrictions and corporate ownership don't fix themselves overnight either. What can you actually do? First, understand that timing the market is almost always a losing game. If you can afford to buy and plan to stay for at least 7 years, the math usually works in your favor over time. Second, look beyond the obvious markets. Some of the best opportunities right now are in smaller cities and suburbs where prices haven't fully detached from local incomes. Third, demand better policy. Housing affordability is not a natural disaster, it's a policy failure. Zoning reform, restrictions on institutional buying, and more public investment in housing supply are all within reach if enough people demand them. The housing market isn't broken by accident. It was built this way. And until the incentives change, the people already inside the system will keep winning while everyone else keeps paying the price. This is the Money Lens. If this changed how you think about housing, subscribe and hit that bell. We break down the systems behind your money every single week.